Hi, everyone. Miss Malcolm Hughes here. And today I am coming to give a Bible reading update, but more so to also talk about a tip that I've learned that has completely transformed the way in which I'm reading the Bible. It's completely changed my experience. I'm going to talk through what that tip is today while also talking us through some takeaways that I've had from rereading Genesis chapter 1. I've started over reading the Bible again, this time with a different perspective. And we'll talk through that again today. But let's get into it. And so, what we have here is one of the most impactful quotes that I've heard earlier. I'm not someone who really believes and invests in division through religion at all. But I know that I believe in higher than I believe in God. I believe in Allah. And I know that I fought that. And so there was a quote that I heard recently that said, some people desire the path and some people are desired by the path. And I think that's just something for all of us to ponder on in our lives. But getting back into the purpose of today. So, Genesis 1 Bible reading experience. But before we delve right in, let's talk about me and who I am and why you should care. I've shared here, but I'm embarking on this journey of reading religious texts, and I'm starting with the Abrahamic religions. And what that means is we're talking about the Torah, we're talking about the gospel. And so when we say Torah, Old Testament of the Bible, when we say the gospel, New Testament of the Bible. And then I'm also fully reading the Quran. These are the Abrahamic religions. And so those are the main three that I'm starting with, but I plan on reading so many others as well. And why, right? Because of that quote that I said, I feel drawn to this. I've always felt drawn to religion, religious texts, how it impacts the world. And think I've been pondering a lot lately, going back to childhood. And one thing that's really stuck with me, and I'm finding it to be truer, just as life goes on, is that like all my life, I felt that like everyone worships the same entity just in different ways and with different names, right? And so one group may do this to worship, another group may call the divine one name versus another name. And I've always figured out or perceived that the Most High must enjoy this diversity of praise. And so I want to read the text, right? That's just something that I've always felt intuitively, but I want to read the text to see how much this is true. And so I want to take you out on this journey with me and allow us to really determine how this theory holds up over time. Is it true? Are the texts, not even whether they're similar or not, just like what is at the essence of them? What's to be taken away? What's to be learned? And is it one higher entity or is it something completely different? And so while going on this journey, here's some of what I'll share, especially right now, because what I'm reading is the Bible, starting with the Old Testament or the Torah. And so I'll share my random thoughts because that's a lot of what I have as I'm going through. I'm taking notes, I'm writing things down, and I'm really just explaining how it's impacting me or just like takeaways. I'm also giving my biblical interpretations, right? I also share some of what I'm reading if I find it impactful to you all. And what I mean by that is supporting text, right? Just accompanying text that I found to aid in my own understanding. Because I told you all, I'm not a theologian. I didn't study this in school, but it is an undertaking that I've decided to embark on. Again, commentary, right? And how is that different from my random thoughts? My random thoughts are things that I'm jotting down along the way. My commentary is afterwards at the end as I sit and reflect on whatever portion I finished reading, giving my thoughts and just my, my more thought through thoughts, my more formulated takeaways. And then any questions that I have, because I still walk away sometimes with questions, right? Sometimes I receive clarity. Sometimes I'm like, what does that mean? What are the larger societal implications of that? And so I want to share that as well. And so let's get started. So for me, a big takeaway while I was reading of Genesis, I wanted to understand for myself what was happening over the creation period. Also, these pictures here from a trip that I took to Mauritius, a beautiful place, highly recommend. But I really wanted to understand for myself, like what's happening over those 6 days of creation. Also, coming to understand that some folks are fundamentalists, others are not. Some people literally believe that the earth was created or what we know of the world was created in 6 days and on the seventh day God rested. And other people don't take it as literally, right? They take it as an interpretation or representation of the process, but it's not a literal 6 days. That's neither here nor there. I just wanted to break down for myself what was happening. So on day one, we got the heavens and the earth, and God dividing what's morning versus what's evening. And then on day two, we got more of the water to divide the sky and the land. So we got that separation. Day three is the earth and the seas. So then you get the fruit and the grass that's growing. And then day four, more day and night, but it's divided by light. So we get the sun, we get the moon, we get the stars. And then day five, living creatures of water. So we get wildlife in that respect. And then day six, living creatures of land and humans. And so this is when humanity comes into play. And another thing I want to point out is I want this to be a collective learning. So as I'm sharing things that I've taken away, if you feel differently or if you know something different, share in the comments. I really do want to learn as much as I can throughout this process. So definitely, definitely, please share any knowledge that you might have, any insight that you might have below. And so a big question that I had during this process, and sometimes my questions, even for me, seem jokingly as I'm writing them, but I'm sincere in them, is like, is outer space heaven? And I'm asking because that is where the sun and the moon reside, and it's spoken of that way. So that was just a question that I had while reading. But a big takeaway for me here, it's something for me to reflect and ponder on, and I want to share my commentary, is Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, which reads, "Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the wild animals, the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." And so this is after man has been created. And many Christians that I've like read and analyzed, they really take this verse to support the Holy Trinity or the idea of Jesus from Genesis. And they say when God says, let us make man in our image, and then that is God letting us know that like at this time Jesus is even with them, right? And I'm using as much as I can, as much as I'll remember, I will use the unisex terms because one thing that happens across religions, and one thing that I found to be true across religions, is that people use the dominant he, when in actuality, if you go to the original languages and the interpretations, it's usually not that he, she that we know in the West, especially here in the US. That's not what it means. It can be used for either. And another wrongful thing is actually to give those human characteristics or identifiers to something that is divine. So there's no he, there's no she. It's really a them, they. But so as much as I can, I'll use non-gender specific pronouns. But what I wanted to say here is like, I felt like this was an overreach. I didn't feel like that was the rationale. Again, I could be wrong, but something else that intrigues me is if you go back to like the Coptic Bible, or one of the theories therein is like chapters that were removed to make the version of the Bible that most folks know and read today, is that at that time there was an idea of duality, and that God was neither, again, he nor she, but he and she. So there was two in one. And so when it says make us, it was referring to that. I personally really like that explanation. That's the one that makes the most sense to me. And so that's the one I like to support. A random thought when I finished this was like, the creator creates, right? That's what's happening in Genesis 1. The creator creates. But the big takeaway that I spoke to in the beginning of here, and something that has completely shifted my reading of the Bible, because what I want to read and why I started over is I want to read this from the perspective of, what is the Lord God trying to say? What's the message that's trying to be shared? Not from the perspective of how am I supposed to use this? What's the guidelines and the guidance for my life? But more so, how do I get to know you better? What is a message that you're trying to share? What were you intending for us to know? That's what I'm trying to do. And I think for me, that's a completely different reading experience for me. And what has solidified that for me and made it deeper is reading from the first person perspective. And what I mean by that is when I'm reading and it says God, blah, 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 I change it to I. Like I'm reading an actual letter that someone, not someone, but I'm reading an actual letter that has been written to us. And it's not from a third person perspective, but it's like I, the Lord God, command X, Y, and Z, or I said X, Y, and Z. And for me, it makes it one, more personal, two, more relatable, but also it allows for more sympathy, in my opinion. It allows for me, when I read some of these things and as I continue to break down the chapters, and like I said, I can't promise I'll come here and share and break down every chapter, but I may break down a group of chapters, or we'll just see how it pans out. But as I'm continuing to read, and as God is making sometimes some what can be deemed very like harsh decisions, as I'm reading it, I'm like, that's not intended to just like bring pain upon people. That's coming from a place of hurt. That's coming from a place of betrayal. That's like there are deep emotions there. And so I think reading it from that first person perspective allows me to see all that's therein, instead of like an objective story. It's like the difference between your friend telling you a story and you getting that firsthand perspective of how they felt versus someone telling you a story about your friend that they saw. Like, I saw X, Y, and Z happen, versus your friend's like, this is what happened, right? It's a completely different perspective. You get different emotions, and it's just a different experience. So I would highly recommend that. That's my big tip and takeaway. And these are just some of my initial thoughts. I did want to come share that big takeaway. I do want to share as I go on this journey, because religion is something that's so interesting to me. I think that it shapes so much of the world, our societies, humans, how people live, how they choose not to live. I'm just so intrigued by it, and I don't know what this will become. I don't know where this journey is taking me. I just know I feel called and drawn to do it, at least for my own edification. And so that's what I want to do. And as I'm going, I want to share, because one of the things that I had to remind myself of, because sometimes you can get so caught up with like what I started this channel to do, is like, I'm someone who loves learning and who loves reading, and I love sharing that information with others and having conversations, respectful discourse with others about it. And that's what I want to do here on the channel. So that's what I'm going to continue doing here on the channel. And I hope that you all will stay. I hope that you all will join the journey. I hope that you all will share. And I hope that we can have honest, respectful, collaborative conversations about what a lot of people perceive to be non-touchable topics. And I think that when rooted in respect, we can talk about anything. And that's what I want us to do here. So that's it for me. I do want to leave us with this. Again, some people desire the path and some people are desired by the path. I hope that whether you desire or whether you are desired, I hope that you continue to learn. I hope that you continue to follow the path for you. And I hope that you continue to be true.